Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on my 2006 Nissan Frontier. I'm going to put a lift kit on it. Just a couple inch lift is all. Pretty windy out here, I don't know if you can hear me. So right now the front sits at about 33 inches. The back's at about 34. I also have a new exhaust for it that I'll put on because its muffler's all rotted out. Just in case you couldn't hear me with the wind outside, this is my 2006 Nissan Frontier. I'm putting a 2-inch lift on it today from Nisstec. It's just an inexpensive spacer and shackle lift. So here's your front spacers. And then here's some new shackles for the release springs. Pretty heavy duty. Lighting's not very good in here, but you can see I've got a pretty significant alignment problem here. The inside of the tire is almost bald. The outside's got quite a bit of tread left on it. Once I do the lift, it'll need an alignment anyways, so I'll go through, make sure everything's tight in the front, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so we're going to start in the front on this and get these spacers put in. This will give it about a 2-inch lift on the front. The spacer just goes up on top of the shock between the spring and the coil bucket. So in order to put that in, you have to take the whole shock assembly out, spring assembly out. So there's 3 bolts on the top, bottom bolt for the shock. And then to get to that bottom bolt in the shock, you have to take the sway bar link off on both sides. So we'll start there, pop that off, and get that shock out of there. And slide that out of the way. Now we can get to this bolt on the bottom of the shock. Alright, so that should be it. This should pop out of there. This thing's pretty rusty. This bushing doesn't look like it's in that great a shape either. But this thing's got over 200,000 miles on it, and I'm probably only going to run it another year or two, so I'm going to put it back together as is. The shocks are still good, they're just really rusty on the outside. The ride's fine. And the reason you have to take these all the way out and not just pop the top off is because when you put this on, it changes the orientation of, they only go on one way. So it changes the orientation of where these studs are. So you have to flip the shock around 180 degrees to get it to go in. Okay, before I put the spring back in, the spring's going to be longer now with the spacer on top, obviously, or the shock will be. And that'll bring this control arm closer to this coil bucket. So what can happen is when you, let's say, hit a dip in the road, the suspension compresses, and then on the rebound, when it comes back, this control arm can hit this coil bucket. So that's what these bushings are for, this end of these bump stops. There's already a little hole here, you just have to drill it out and then mount this up in there, so when this comes into contact it hits rubber instead of steel. So we'll do that next. After that we've got to swap out these cam bolts in the lower control arm. So we'll be right back. Hey guys, it's the next day. Ran into a few issues yesterday, which is pretty common when you're working on something that's old and rusty like this. The first one is these lower control arm bolts. These things are just rusted solid to the bushing. There's a steel insert inside that bushing, and these bolts are just rusted solid. There's no way to get these out without either cutting the bolts off and replacing the bushing or just replacing the whole lower control arm. So I'm only doing a 2-inch lift on this, and the adjustable bolts, camber bolts are kind of an option, I think. So I'm going to leave these bolts in place, see if I can get it aligned, and if they can get it within spec, then I'm just going to leave it as is. If they can't get it aligned because of those, then I'll have to come back, cut those out, and either replace the bushings or the whole control arm. Then on this side, bear with me, see if you can see this. I don't know if you'll be able to see the play in this. But this tie rod end tip here is shot. I don't have one of those right now, so for now I'm just going to get the springs put back in, and then I'll order some parts. Alright, to put the springs back in, you do have to take this upper control arm ball joint off, or loose. And then I've just got this bottom supported with the jack so it doesn't hang from the cables, otherwise it'll just hang from these brake cables, and that's not good. Alright, so I'll just zip it on part way with the impact wrench, and then I'll see if I can torque it down. So it's got to be torqued down to 60 foot-pounds. That's what I was afraid of. It's just spinning in there. See if I can get a little tighter. There we go. I'll grab a new cotter pin for that. And we can tighten up the shocks and put it back on the ground. Alright, so moving on to the back. We've got to get these old shackles off, which look very, very rusty. And then bolt these new ones back on. Alright, so I've got the rear end supported on the transmission jack. Got the spare tire out of the way. Just gonna see if we can get these to break free. Pretty rusty, so I don't know how it's gonna go. All right, bolt number 2. All right, so this bottom stud is basically rusted in here. We can't get this loose, so we're going to cut this off here and then see if we can get it out after that. All right, so we're going to try an air chisel on this to see if we can get it free that way. All right, so I managed to get the old ones out with an air chisel and a pipe wrench. I'm just going to lube these up and slide these new shafts in place. I don't know which hole to go in on these, so I'm just gonna go the middle. Just see how it turns out. Can you jack that jack down some more?
Yeah.
Alright, so here's what it looks like with the lift kit on it. I'll be getting some tires in the next few weeks. Get those put on and show you what the final is. As it sits right now, the back is right around 36. And the front's just about 35 and a quarter. So that's going to be it for this one. I'll see you next time.